Hi, good morning. It's Jackie. So I wanted to tell you that we're not going to be cooking the entire time that we're on YouTube because we like to do food challenges, especially like the hot and spicy ones with our kids. And we also like to eat out quite a bit and be a little bit lazy. So we're going to also try stuff and let you guys know how it all turns out. But it's going to be cold and it's going to snow tonight and tomorrow, and it's going to be probably not enough or any accumulation. So there's not going to be anything closed down or anything. But I was like, oh yay, cold weather, I'm gonna make Italian beef sandwiches. So today I'm gonna make some Italian beef sandwiches, and because the meat has to cook a super long time, I'm up early this morning starting it, and I'll show you the entire process, and then it's gonna be hours in between, and I'll be back to construct the sandwiches. So everybody likes a good Italian beef sandwich, so stay tuned. I'm going to use a chuck pot roast, the 2.27 pounds, because there's only going to be maybe 3 of us eating today, and this is quite a big hunk of meat. As you can see, you can use any one of the meats that are in this category that you would normally use for a pot roast or something to that effect. And I'm going to use some zesty Italian seasoning. I'm going to use Aus Jus instead of complete beef broth or beef consomme. I'm going to use pepperoncinis and also some pepper, salt, paprika, Italian seasoning, some garlic, sea salt, and then of course my go-to is the all-purpose seasoning from the old-fashioned butcher shop here in Evansville, Indiana. The water that you see is going to be to mix up some of the Aus Jus. Now, I might use 1 cup of beef broth only because the Aus Jus pack only makes 3 cups, and I think I'm going to need approximately 4 cups of liquid for this. So I'm going to also cut this meat up because I got a little bit of a late start watching the news and trying to figure out what was going on, and just see all the different things that people were saying about the Walmart incident. So I'm going to cut it so that it'll cook a little faster because I don't have the 10 to 12 hours that I need in order to have it done by dinner time. I also forgot to mention that I am also going to use some red sweet pepper strips at the end when I actually construct the sandwiches. Because my kids don't tend to like celery and all the other things that go in the Italian beef recipe. So we're going to use those red sweet peppers, and hopefully they just won't notice. I'm just going to basically, and I'm not going to cut it in cubes or anything. I'm just basically going to slice it a couple times. You can see here how thick it is. And you sort of want to go and cut with the grain. So I'm going to just make this into actually 3 pieces, like so. And then I'm going to start out with the garlic salt, sea salt, and I'm going to flip all the pieces up, sort of. Well, this one's kind of mountain shaped, so I'm going to put a quite generous amount of this. I'm not a huge fan of salt. A lot of it cooks down into the juice, and a lot of it will be needed because of the thickness of the meat. And I'm going to kind of rub it in a little and then flip. And I'm going to repeat this step until I have every bit of the meat chunks covered. Can't really get it on the sides as well with the grinder. I'm going to take, that's what I got my salt for. I'm going to take the sides of this and even a little bit in this middle part. If it cracks, that's great. If not, fine. And then you just want to make sure you have enough of the salt all over the meat. And these sides, you can't really get if you're just doing one hand. So then I'm going to put a little pepper I'm gonna put a little pepper on the whole thing here. Same as the others, you want the entire pieces. Or if you use one piece, you can, but I would recommend if you use the entire piece, like thaw it out a little in advance and maybe season it and put it in the refrigerator overnight so that the inside has a chance to soak up some of the salt, because you're gonna need it. Especially like since most people are gonna use like maybe a roast 2 to 3 times the size of this one, because they might have larger families. I actually have a larger family, but they've all moved out on me. My kids are all growing up and moving out. So I'm gonna use some paprika. I like the smokiness of paprika, so I use it on a lot of things. And so I'm gonna use it on here as well. And season it. I just really like everything seasoned good. There's nothing worse than bland food. And if you want to be comforted, like that's the worst thing. Like, oh, I'm going to take a bite of this and it tastes like, you know what. All right. So then lastly, I'm going to put a little bit of my all-purpose seasoning around the outside. I normally buy a lot of our meat for our house from the old-fashioned butcher shop. I haven't been down there in a couple of weeks because by the time I actually remember that I need something and try to get down there, they're always closed. I think they're closed on Sundays and Mondays. And that's the time, Sunday, usually when I'm sitting around thinking like, man, what do I need to be doing? So I haven't been down there in a couple weeks and I'm missing it, so I'll probably make sure to get down there this week. Okay, so now the meat is seasoned really, really well, as you can see, and so I'm gonna pop it in the crock pot and show you what I'm gonna do next. The Aus Jus calls for 3 cups of water, so this is just 1 cup. I'm actually gonna add 4 cups of water this morning to the crock pot. I'm going to add 4 cups so that if I decide that I want to add some broth, I can add a little bit in without any problems. So 4 cups of water in your crock pot. I'm going to turn mine on high like I mentioned earlier. It usually is like 10 to 12 hours to cook if you're going to do it whole. And if you have time to have it run all day. So I'm going to put the water in and I'm going to pour my packet of Aus Jus gravy in the water. So I can mix it up before I add my meat. I do have my crock pot on, I showed you. I turned it on high because I want it to start getting hot and getting some heat going while I'm doing this. It won't actually probably start to cook until I add my lid, which is fine. So I've got my Aus Jus all mixed up. Now I want to take my pieces of meat and kind of arrange them around. I'm going to eat this biggest one that didn't split. I'm going to stick it in the middle, kind of on its side, so that there is room for the others. This one here is like workable because it kind of tore some. So I'm going to put this down in the meat down in the Aus Jus mixture. And then I'm going to take my packet of zesty Italian seasoning and I'm going to dump the entire packet into the crock pot. Now I'm not really going to stir it. I just want it to kind of slowly simmer in and mix through as I go along. And then I'm going to open the jar of pepperoncini, and I'm actually going to pour most all of this juice in along with, all. I'm going to pour the juice in, and then I'm going to take and just put some of these peppers on top. And I'm only going to use about half because I'm actually going to want to use the rest of the peppers when I construct the sandwiches later on. So now I have all of everything in this crock pot, and I'm going to add the lid, and then I'm literally just going to wait for maybe about 6 hours before I take the lid off or do anything with it. So we want this meat to be like super tender and literally just fall apart. It's been about 8 hours since we started, and we have some really good looking yummy Italian beef. So now I'm just going to remove it from here and shred it up in a bowl so that we can get ready to decorate our sandwiches. The beef shredded up really nicely. I did pull out the big chunks of fat that were in here because you really don't want a huge mouthful of the fat. But as you can see, it's mixed up. You leave the pepperoncinis in. They're loaded with the flavor from the meat from cooking all day. And so this is what your meat should look like, right, whenever you're about to make your sandwiches. So now I'm going to take my bottle of red sweet pepper strips. I'm going to drain the juice from it. And then after that, I'm going to add it to the meat. They're all drained, ready to go in. I'm going to pour the entire jar in because I like a lot of the peppers. They're really good. They're actually sweet. The meat's still really hot and the juice in it, so they're going to incorporate and they'll just kind of heat up with everything else. So I like the sweet ones. There's already some spice going into this, and then when I make the sandwiches, depending on who does and doesn't like it, I'm going to top with the mild Chicago style giardiniera, however you pronounce that. And so I'm going to add that. So I've got the peppers mixed in really well here, and we're going to start construction of our Italian beef sandwiches. The bread, I'm using a soft French bread. Most people use hoagie rolls, but I guess there's a new bread shortage because I've tried to get hoagie rolls from 3 or 4 different stores without any success. So I'm going to use this one. It looks just as good. And I'm going to cut it just like I would if I was going to make a big sub sandwich or anything else. And you want to cut down, but not really like cut all the way through, so that you have like a little pocket sort of to put all your stuff in. So now I've got this open, and I'm just going to spoon, or actually I'm going to use my tongs because I do want some of the juice to transfer over. And so I'm just going to start on one end and move the meat down throughout the sandwich. So I'm incorporating obviously the peppers, the juice, the meat. You want a lot of meat, you know, so that you don't have too much bread. And so I'm loading this up. That section got a lot of red peppers. It seems like we'll spread them out. Make sure we get some pepperoncinis in each group. And this sandwich is really big, so I think this is definitely way longer than a foot long. So we're gonna make this huge one, and then 3 of us are actually gonna divide it up and eat it. So I've got, so there's a lot of meat spread throughout, and so there's enough left maybe for, like, you know, if we actually had hoagie rolls, we'd have enough to make another sandwich. So typically I think people use provolone for this. I'm going to start by putting like a slice of provolone, or I'm sorry, mozzarella all the way down, and then I'm going to toast it barely to melt this cheese with some Italian blend cheese on top. This is Italian 6 cheese. It has mozzarella, smoked provolone, Asiago, Parmesan, Romano, and Fontina cheeses. I just figured since it's an Italian beef sandwich with a whole lot of meat that it'll work really good to have some Italian cheese on here also. So I'm going to sprinkle it down the middle here and Cover it all. And then I'm going to put it in the oven on broil for maybe like barely a minute. And I'm going to watch it because I have a thing with putting things in the oven on broil and walking off and then coming back and like remembering a few minutes later. And then once I remember, it's too late because the bread or whatever is burnt. So today the goal is going to be not to actually burn the sandwich. It's been about a minute. So I'm going to go ahead and pull this out using 2 hot pads so I don't drop it. And yay, the cheese is all bubbly. Here is this monster Italian beef sandwich. And the only thing left to do now is we're going to cut it because each person may or may not want extra pepperoncinis and some of the giardiniera sandwich mix. So I'm going to cut the sandwich into 3 equal parts, put it on a plate, and then add accordingly what everybody may or may not want. So this is going to be about here. And I'm going to put that piece aside for Brandon. He's super picky. I'm sure he's not going to eat the sauce. Oh man, we're losing our meat. No way. All right. And then we're going to cut this one like so into 2 more pieces. And I almost feel like the end piece did not get quite as much meat as the other pieces. So I'm going to add a little more and give this piece to Larry. He's been at work all day. I'm sure he's going to be excited. It's really cold outside and he will be happy to have the extra stuff. So then I'm just going to add some of this gardenia mixture. They do say that this Italian beef is like a specialty from Chicago. So that's why I chose the Chicago style gardenia. And I do like it. The only thing I don't like is the olives. So I'm going to pick those off and put those on Larry's side. There. And that's enough. The juice is running off. I'm going to put some on his section of his sandwich with a really nice added couple of pepperoncinis, and then a couple obviously for myself. I really like these things. I eat them on with pizza. I eat them with almost everything. I absolutely love the flavor of pepperoncinis. Well, anyway, they're too hard to get out, so 2 is going to be plenty. And so here is what the Italian beefs look like. They are going to be hard to eat, more than likely. They're really big in fat and filling. And so this is what it looks like. All served up and ready to go. I'm going to eat my Italian beef with some creamy Italian pasta and some plain, no salt added potato chips. So this is going to be good. Thank you for joining us again for Italian beef sandwiches. I hope you enjoy them. And